They say love can happen in the unlikeliest of places, but no one warns you when it happens in your own house, behind closed doors, between the walls that raised you. My name is Eli Morgan. I'm 24, a grad student in psychology. Neat, quiet, the kind of guy who watches people more than he talks to them. And for most of my life, I played by the rules. But everything changed the day he moved in. His name is Jesse Blake, 22. My mom married his dad 3 years ago, one of those whirlwind second marriages that barely gave us time to learn each other's names before we were expected to play family. I always thought of Jesse as my stepbrother. Not blood, not close, just there, a little reckless, a little too good-looking for his own good. But we didn't live together, didn't grow up sharing bunk beds or childhood secrets. We were adults, thrown together in the same orbit. Awkward hellos at Christmas, strained conversations at birthdays, and one summer barbecue where we got drunk and kissed the neighbor's son behind the shed. That's all we were. Until my mom called one afternoon while I was folding laundry and said, "Jesse needs a place to stay, just for a couple of weeks. Can you help him out?" I should have said no. I should have come up with 1,000 excuses. My schedule, my studies, my mental health. But I didn't. I said, "Yeah, that's fine. He can take the spare room." And just like that, my world began to shift. He showed up the next evening. Black duffel bag slung over his shoulder, sleeves rolled up, a cocky half-smile I remembered all too well. "Yo," he said, stepping inside like he'd always belonged. "Place smells like lavender. You living in a yoga studio now." I smirked, shutting the door behind him. "Laundry detergent. And no, I still do kickboxing. You just haven't been around." He dropped his bag and looked at me, really looked. "You look older, but in a good way, like got your life together older." I laughed. "Flattery doesn't get you out of chores." He shrugged. "Was worth a shot." That night, we ordered takeout, watched a dumb sci-fi movie, talked like not brothers, not friends, even more like two strangers tiptoeing towards something unspoken. And when he went to bed, closing the door gently behind him, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the quiet, except it wasn't quiet. Not really. Something in the air buzzed. Something that had nothing to do with familiarity, and everything to do with curiosity. The days that followed were uneventful. On the surface, he made coffee every morning, shirtless, hair a mess, humming under his breath like he hadn't just woken up in another man's apartment. I started avoiding the kitchen before 9 a.m. He left his socks everywhere. He used my shampoo. He watched me read on the couch, eyes lingering a little too long, then looking away like nothing happened. And one night, when we both ended up brushing our teeth at the same time in the bathroom, shoulders touching, mouths full of toothpaste, I caught his reflection in the mirror, and something moved in me. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't brotherly, not even close. It all cracked the night the power went out. A storm rolled in fast. Lightning, thunder, the whole city grid blinked out. I was lighting candles when he came out of his room in sweatpants and no shirt, holding his phone like it had betrayed him. Wi-Fi's dead. No shit. I muttered, striking another match. Storm killed everything. He walked over to the couch, dropped onto it, and patted the cushion beside him. "Well, no distractions now. Guess we're forced to talk." I hesitated. He raised a brow. "Scared of a little conversation?" I sat. We talked. About nothing. About everything. And somewhere between a story about his job, something boring in marketing, and a joke about his Tinder matches, his knee touched mine. Neither of us moved. And that's when I noticed he wasn't laughing anymore. He was watching me. The air thickened. My heart raced. "Eli," he said quietly. I swallowed hard. "Yeah." He leaned closer. His voice was a whisper now. "Do you think about it?" I froze. "About what?" His lips curved. "About us." The air left my lungs. I looked at him. Really looked. His jaw. His mouth. The heat in his eyes. This wasn't some confused game. This wasn't brotherly bonding. This was something else. Just as I started, he leaned in closer. If you tell me to stop, I will. Right now. I couldn't speak. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't want him to stop. And I think he knew it, because the next second, his lips brushed mine, soft, barely there, like a question. And when I didn't pull away, he kissed me again. Longer, deeper, real. I kissed him back. I shouldn't have, but I did, and everything inside me shattered. When we finally pulled apart, breathless, hearts pounding, he didn't look smug. He didn't look scared. He just looked at me and whispered, "This isn't just a phase for me, Eli. I need you to know that." And I believed him. God help me, I believed him. But belief doesn't fix everything. Because when I woke up the next morning, alone in my bed, the apartment too quiet, there was a note on the kitchen table. 5 words. Went out. Be back later. Nothing else. No kiss. No look. No confirmation that last night actually happened. I sat at the table, staring at those words, wondering what came next, wondering if anything would ever be the same again. And deep down, I knew it wouldn't. What would you do if you fell for your stepbrother and he kissed you back? Would you run or would you give in? Comment below, like, subscribe, and share for part 2, because this story is just getting started. I told myself it was a one-time thing, that it was just a storm, the darkness, the candlelight, just 2 guys caught in a moment. But the next day, when Jesse walked through the door with his hoodie pulled over his head and a grocery bag swinging from his wrist, I felt it again. That pull, that thing no one talks about in polite conversation. He dropped the bag on the counter, tossed his keys, and gave me that look. Not a smile, not a smirk. Something quieter. Something that said, "We're not going to talk about it, but we both know it happened." "Got you oat milk," he said casually, unpacking the groceries. "Figured that's still your thing." I stared at him, at the way his jaw flexed when he reached the cabinet, at the way his voice sounded softer than it had in months, like he didn't regret a thing. "You didn't have to do that," I said. He paused, turned slightly. I wanted to. Silence. The air between us wasn't heavy. It was loaded. Like if either of us said the wrong word, the whole thing would go off. He looked over his shoulder. "About last night. Here it comes." I braced myself. "It wasn't nothing," he said. He didn't turn around. Just stood there, still, quiet, like he was waiting to be judged. I didn't answer right away, because I didn't know how. So I walked over, slowly, and stood beside him at the counter, close enough to feel the heat off his skin. "It didn't feel like nothing," I finally said. He looked at me then, not through me, at me, like he was trying to read a language he didn't fully understand. And maybe he couldn't, because neither could I. But the way his fingers brushed mine on the counter, the way we didn't move when it happened, it said enough, more than enough. The rest of that day was quiet. We stayed out of each other's way, didn't hover, didn't flirt, didn't cross lines. But every time he walked past me in the apartment, the air changed, like I was holding my breath and didn't even know it. That night, I stayed in my room, scrolling endlessly on my phone, trying to pretend I was normal, trying to forget that the person sleeping just down the hall had kissed me like he meant it. Around midnight, I heard music, soft, bluesy, coming from the living room. Jesse always played vinyl when he couldn't sleep. It was his thing. I got up quietly, padded down the hall, and there he was, on the couch, blanket over his legs, hoodie off, tank top clinging to his chest, and in his hand his sketchbook. I leaned against the doorframe. "Couldn't sleep?" He looked up, surprised. "I didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't." He hesitated, then held up the book. "Want to see?" I walked over, sat at the edge of the couch. He turned the page. It wasn't landscapes, or cartoons, or anything generic. It was me, sleeping, reading, staring out the kitchen window, all sketched in soft lines, carefully, intimately. My voice caught in my throat. "You've been drawing me?" His gaze was steady. "I draw what I notice." You notice me? He didn't smile, didn't joke, just nodded, all the time. And that's when I knew this wasn't curiosity. This wasn't fluke. It was us, becoming something we couldn't stop. That night, I didn't go back to my room. I stayed beside him on the couch. Close. Too close. The music played. The light stayed low. And at some point, I fell asleep against his shoulder. I don't know how long we stayed like that. But when I opened my eyes the next morning, sunlight streaking through the blinds, he was still there, awake, watching me. He whispered, "Good morning." I smiled, but inside, I panicked. Because what were we doing? What was this? Was it love? Lust? Loneliness? I didn't have an answer. But I want to keep finding one. With him. Even if it broke every rule we were supposed to follow. If you asked me what day it all shifted, I couldn't tell you. Because it didn't happen with a bang. It happened slowly, quietly, like water rising under a locked door. One day, Jesse was my stepbrother crashing in my guest room. The next, he was brushing against me in the kitchen like it meant something, touching my wrist when he passed behind me, grabbing 2 mugs instead of one in the morning without asking. He became a presence, everywhere, and I was letting it happen. That week, I tried to live normally. Class, thesis deadlines, meetings with my advisor. But I wasn't really in any of it, because at home, he was waiting. And every night, we got a little closer. Not always physically. Sometimes it was just sitting next to each other, knees touching, not pulling away. Sometimes it was talking until 2 a.m. about stuff that didn't even matter. Childhood fears, weird dreams, favorite ice cream flavors. And sometimes it was the silence between us that felt the loudest. I started to feel things I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. Safety, heat, want, and it terrified me. Because he was supposed to be off limits. The first time we kissed again, it was different. It wasn't like that stormy night with the power out. It was after dinner. He was doing the dishes, humming something low and soulful. I was drying a plate when he turned, hands dripping, and without a word, he leaned in. His lips touched mine like it was a habit, like he'd done it before and would do it again. I kissed him back. Harder, longer. When we broke apart, breathing ragged, he whispered, "I'm not sorry." And neither was I, but the guilt came anyway, slamming into me like a wave. Because no matter how we spun it, this was wrong. Not illegal, not blood, but wrong enough. People would never understand. Our parents would never understand. And yet, every time I tried to pull away, my heart stayed right there with him. 3 nights later, things crossed a line that couldn't be undone. We were watching a movie on the couch, some old noir film he liked. His arms stretched along the backrest behind me. Halfway through, I shifted, laid my head on his shoulder. He didn't flinch, didn't say a word. He just moved his hand to my knee, let it rest there, solid, grounding. And I swear I could feel the pulse in my throat. I turned my face slightly. He looked down. Our noses brushed. And then we were kissing again. Only this time it didn't stop. This time we didn't hold back. After, I lay with him, breath shallow, body warm, mind racing. He held me. No words. Just the rhythm of his fingers tracing circles on my back. And for a brief, shining moment, I let myself forget everything outside those 4 walls. The labels, the rules, the world. I just felt him. But the real world doesn't stay away for long. It knocks, hard, and 2 days later, it did. It started with my mom's voice on speakerphone. "Your stepdad and I are flying into the city next week. Thought we'd stop by and see you both." My stomach flipped. I was in the kitchen, Jesse behind me, leaning on the counter. He mouthed, "Both?" I nodded. I'd never told them he was staying with me. It was too complicated, too risky. And now they were coming. "Of course," I told her, voice tight. "You're always welcome." I hung up and turned to Jesse. "We have a problem." He didn't freak out, didn't panic. He just grabbed a water bottle and said, "We clean the place. We act normal. I sleep on the couch. Simple. Simple. Right. Except nothing about this was simple anymore. I was sleeping in his arms. He was drawing me when I wasn't looking. We were making each other coffee in the morning like a couple. Pretending in front of our parents wouldn't just be lying. It would be acting against everything we'd become. Still, what choice did we have? The day they arrived, Jesse dressed clean. Pressed shirt, nice jeans, no cologne. He said he didn't want to smell like tension. I laughed, nervous. My mom hugged us both. His dad slapped his back and said, "Look at you two." Finally bonding like real brothers. I almost choked. Jesse just smiled. Nailed it. They stayed for dinner. The conversation danced around jobs, the weather, Mom's new obsession with yoga. Jesse was a pro, charming, polite, cracking the occasional joke. Not once did he look at me that way. Not once did his hand brush mine. He didn't even touch the back of my chair. And it made something burn in my chest. I missed him, even while he was sitting 3 feet away. That's how I knew this wasn't just heat. Wasn't just thrill. It was more. And I was already in too deep. After they left, Jesse shut the door, tossed his head back against it. I deserve an Oscar. I laughed, walking into the kitchen. But my laughter faded fast, because when I turned around, he was watching me. Still, intensely, like the second the door closed, he could finally breathe again. He stepped closer. "You okay?" I nodded. He took my hand, interlaced our fingers. "I hated pretending I don't want to touch you." "Same." He kissed me, slow, unhurried. No storm this time. No tension. Just us. And in that kiss, I knew, whatever we were becoming, we'd already passed the point of no return. We didn't talk about it. What we were doing. There were no labels, no rules, just looks, touches, late nights that blurred into mornings where we barely said a word, because we didn't need to. But silence doesn't mean safety, and comfort doesn't mean clarity, because the more time I spent wrapped in him, the more I felt the truth creeping in from the edges. This was going to cost us. It started with a knock on the door. I was still in my hoodie and socks, hair a mess from the night before. Jesse called out from the shower, "You got it?" I opened the door and froze. There, standing with messenger bag and a sharp tie, was Brady, Jesse's old friend from college. And once upon a time, something more. "Hey," he said, voice light, but his eyes already scanning the inside of my apartment. He said he was staying here. "Didn't expect you." I forced a polite smile. "Hey, yeah, he's around. Just give him a sec." Brady stepped in, towing off his boots like he owned the place, like he'd been here before. He hadn't, but I already hated how comfortable he looked. "How long's he been crashing here?" he asked, opening the fridge without asking. "Few weeks." Brady smirked. "Bet that's been interesting." Before I could answer, Jesse walked in, towel around his shoulders, hair dripping, and then the room shifted. Not for me, for them. The way Brady looked at him, like he still had a claim, like he still knew every version of Jesse I hadn't met yet. And the way Jesse looked back, it wasn't nothing. They sat on the couch, laughing, catching up, and I stood in the kitchen, pretending to clean, pretending not to listen, pretending that every single laugh didn't scrape against my ribs like sandpaper. Brady had history. He knew things I didn't, and I hated that it mattered. At one point, Jesse called out, "You get over there?" I nodded, forced, smiled, tight, totally. That night, after Brady left, Jesse came into my room, didn't knock, just stood there, watching me as I scrolled mindlessly through nothing on my screen. "You okay?" "Peachy." He tilted his head. "That's your lying voice." I didn't look up. "You ever sleep with him?" Pause. Silence. "Yeah, once. Years ago. It didn't stick." "But you invited him over." "I didn't invite him. He texted. He was in the area. He's an old friend." I finally looked up. "And I'm what?" He stepped forward, slowly. "You're not old, and you're not a friend." I waited, But he didn't finish the sentence. Didn't say what I was. So I turned away. And that night we didn't sleep together. Not because we were mad, but because the distance was already growing between us. The next few days were off. Little things. He came home later. I stopped waiting up. He cooked dinner and left me a plate instead of sitting down with me. And the sketchbook? It stayed closed. We weren't fighting, but we weren't us either. And I hated it. One night, I woke up and the apartment was quiet. Too quiet. His door was open. Empty. Panic rose in my chest like a wave. I texted him. No reply. Checked the time, 2:13 a.m. I stood there barefoot in the kitchen, heart pounding, until I heard the lock click. He walked in, hoodie up, hair wet from rain. I didn't ask. Didn't need to. He saw the look on my face and sighed. It wasn't what you think. I didn't say anything. You didn't have to. Then tell me. He looked at me for a long time, then dropped his keys on the counter. I just needed air. That's all. I stepped forward, close enough to smell the rain on his skin. Is this too much for you? He blinked. What? Me. This. Us. Is it too real? He hesitated, longer than he should have, and that was all the answer I needed. I stepped back. Okay. He grabbed my arm. No, wait. That's not. I shook my head. It's fine. You don't owe me anything. But I want to. He said it fast, like it hurt to admit, like it was scraping out of him raw. I stared at him. I don't need you to want to. I need you to choose to. Then I walked away, left him standing there, dripping and breathless. And for the first time since this began, I wasn't sure what we were walking toward anymore, or if we were even walking in the same direction. He didn't sleep in his room that night. Didn't knock on mine either. The apartment felt too big, too quiet, like he had taken something with him when he walked into the dark. I kept waiting for the door to open, for his voice to break the silence. But it never came. The next morning, he was gone. His sneakers missing from the entryway. The sketchbook wasn't on the coffee table, and his phone charger wasn't plugged in by the couch like it always was. Panic cracked open in my chest. Had he left? For good? Was last night the thing that broke us? I walked to the fridge, pulled the door open on instinct. On the middle shelf, a brown paper bag. Inside it, 2 almond croissants from the bakery I loved, a note on the side of the bag. In his messy handwriting, you still talk in your sleep. Thought you'd want these when you wake up. I'll be back by lunch. Jay. I stood there, holding the bag like it was some kind of lifeline, like it meant we still had a chance. And maybe we did. When he came back, he didn't say much, just set his keys down, looked at me from across the kitchen, and nodded once. I nodded back. Neither of us apologized. Neither of us needed to, because it wasn't about one night or one argument. It was about the space between us tightening again, shrinking, like gravity was finally working in our favor. That night, we lay on the couch, shoulders touching, the movie on TV forgotten. His fingers slowly found mine between the cushions. I turned my head. Tell me something you've never told anyone. I whispered. He thought for a moment, then said, when I was 16, I used to sit in my closet and draw. Not because I liked being in small spaces, but because it felt safe. Like no one could see me wanting things I wasn't supposed to want. I swallowed hard. And did you stop? He looked at me, eyes full of things he didn't know how to say. I tried, but it never really goes away. What? That ache. I shifted closer. And now? He hesitated, then pressed his forehead to mine. Now it's louder. We didn't kiss that night. We didn't need to, because intimacy isn't always physical. Sometimes it's just breathing together, letting silence do the talking. But as I lay there, watching the rise and fall of his chest, I realized something terrifying. I didn't want this to end. Not when he left. Not when summer was over. Not when life called us back to being stepbrothers instead of whatever this was. A few days later, the first crack formed in reality. I got a text from my mom. Big news. We're planning a family trip in 3 weeks. All of us. You, Jesse, your stepdad, and me. Cabin weekend like old times. You're both coming. No excuses. I stared at the screen. Cabin weekend. With them. With him. Back to pretending we were just two guys who shared a last name. Back to smiling like there was nothing twisted beneath it. I showed Jesse the message. His eyes scanned it slowly. Then he looked up. Well, guess we'll need to bring our best acting faces. Can you do that? I asked. Do what? Pretend again. He looked down, took a deep breath. I can, if it means I still get to come back here with you. That hit me harder than I expected, because it wasn't romantic. It wasn't a declaration. It was honest. He was willing to lie to the world, just to keep what we had alive. And yet, I wasn't sure if I could do the same, because every time he touched me, it felt like a secret I was dying to scream. A week passed, then another, and something in him started to change. He stopped sketching, stopped playing music late at night. He went out more, alone, and when he came back, he didn't always come into my room. I felt him slipping, not fast, but in inches, like he was bracing himself a fall, or pulling away before I could beat him to it. I confronted him one night in the hallway. Are you seeing someone? His brow furrowed. What? You leave for hours. You come back quiet. You avoid me. He blinked. So that's what you think. I'm asking. He stepped closer, his voice low, controlled. I'm not seeing anyone. I'm trying to figure out how to exist in a world that doesn't want me to love you. I froze, because no matter how quietly he said it, it was the first time either of us had said the word out loud. Love. And suddenly the air in the hallway was too thick, too full of meaning. I whispered, say it again. He didn't, but he pulled me in, held me close, and I felt it, every unsaid word, every ache, everything he was too scared to say, and everything I already knew. The cabin hadn't changed. Same slanted roof, same uneven porch steps, same pine scent in the air that made you feel like you were a million miles away from the rest of the world. It was supposed to be nostalgic, warm, safe, but when Jesse and I stepped out of the car together, duffel bags in hand, it felt like walking into a trap, like the past was waiting here to expose us. Mom greeted us first, wrapped me in a tight hug, then turned to Jesse with a laugh. You look taller. Have you been working out? He gave her that easy smile he always used to disarm people. Just keeping busy. Then my stepdad clapped Jesse on the back, like nothing was weird at all. Like the two of us hadn't been tangled in sheets just a week ago. Like everything was normal. But it wasn't. Not for me. Not when I saw how close Jesse stood behind me. Not when I caught his hand brushing my lower back for a split second. So quick, it might have been nothing, but I felt it, and I knew it wasn't. They gave us the upstairs room, one bed, just like old times. Mom chirped. I almost dropped my bag. Jesse chuckled beside me. Completely cool. I followed him up the stairs, the wood creaking with each step. As soon as the door shut, I dropped the act. Are you serious? He turned, smirking. What? One bed. He tossed his bag down. Unless you want to sleep on the floor, I don't see a problem. I crossed my arms. What if they come in? What if something slips? He stepped closer, his voice lower. I'll keep my hands to myself, unless you ask me not to. I hated how fast I flushed, and how badly I wanted to ask him not to. Dinner was tense. For me, at least. Every glance Jesse gave me across the table felt like a loaded weapon. Every time he laughed too loud or touched my shoulder, I imagined my mom's eyes narrowing. But she didn't say anything. Not until after dessert, when she and I were alone on the back porch. The others were inside playing cards. She handed me a mug of tea and sat beside me on the steps. Everything okay with you and Jesse? My heart stopped. I tried to sound casual. Yeah. Why? She stirred her tea slowly. You two seem close. I forced a smile. We've always been close. She looked at me, really looked, And for the first time in a long time, I felt seen in a way I didn't want to be. Okay, she said finally, taking a sip. I was just wondering. She stood up. Don't stay out too long. It's supposed to rain. And just like that, she left me alone with a stomach full of panic. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling as rain tapped the cabin roof. Jesse lay beside me, close, but not touching, not saying a word, until suddenly he whispered, "She knows, doesn't she?" I turned to him. "She suspects." His voice cracked just enough to make it real. "Do you think she'll tell him?" I shook my head. "No, not unless we give her a reason to." He was quiet for a long time. Then, "I hate this. Being scared?" "No, hiding you." In the morning, the storm was gone, but something had shifted. We were quiet over breakfast. No more teasing under the table. No more long looks when no one was watching. We became strangers again, because if we weren't, we risked everything. That afternoon, we hiked up the ridge like we used to. Mom packed snacks. My stepdad led the way with a walking stick and trail map, acting like it was a survival expedition. Jesse and I walked behind them, side by side, saying nothing, feeling everything. At one point, he slipped his hand into his pocket and brushed mine. Barely, but enough. I looked at him, and the ache in his eyes said it all. He was trying to hold on to something that didn't fit in the daylight. That night, I found him out on the dock, sitting with his feet in the lake, staring at the moon. I joined him, quiet, still. It took him a while to speak. "When this trip is over, what are we?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know, and because saying nothing felt like the only thing I could say without crying. He turned toward me. "I don't want this to fade." "I don't either. But we can't stay in that apartment forever." "I know." He looked away. "Then what the hell do we do?" I wanted to say, we fight. We tell the truth. We stop living in the shadow of their rules. But instead, I just whispered, "One more night. Let's just have one more night." He didn't speak again, but he leaned his head on my shoulder, and we sat there until sun came up. We thought we were being careful. But secrets have a way of rotting through walls, until someone finally hears the truth that was never meant to be spoken. It started with a door, just one that didn't shut all the way, one that should have clicked when Jesse came into the room that night, but didn't. He kissed me like he needed it to breathe. Desperate. Rushed. His hoodie still damp from the dock. My fingers digging into his shoulders. We didn't speak. Didn't need to. Just held each other like we were the last two people in the world. And outside, silence. Until we heard it. A gasp. Soft. Sharp. Enough to freeze both of us in place. I turned my head just in time to see the door creak, open another inch. And Mom standing there, hand over her mouth, eyes wide. And then she turned and walked away. Fast, silent, gone. "Wait." I stumbled toward the door, but Jessie caught my wrist. "Don't." She saw. I know. She saw everything. I know. And the weight of it crashed into the room like a wave. I found her outside, wrapped in a cardigan, arms crossed tight, eyes locked on the trees like she was trying to unsee what she saw. "Mom." She didn't turn, just said quietly, "How long?" I swallowed hard. Since he moved in with me. She exhaled, shaky, painful. "You're stepbrothers, for God's sake. We're not related. You grew up together." "No, we didn't." "We were thrown together." She finally turned to me. Her eyes weren't angry. They were broken. I knew something was off. The way you looked at each other. But I thought maybe I was imagining it. I didn't mean for it to happen. But it did. We stood there in the woods, birds chirping above, a breeze threading between us. Then she whispered, "Does he love you?" I blinked. "What?" "Jesse, does he love you?" I nodded. "And do you love him?" My voice cracked. "Yes." She looked away, then said quietly, "I don't know what to do with that," and walked back into the house. Dinner that night was unbearable. Silent, forks scraping plates. My stepdad talked about car maintenance. Mom barely spoke. Jesse stared at his food like it had answers. No one looked at us. But everyone knew. Later, as we packed our bags in the upstairs room, Jesse sat on the bed and said, "We should leave." Now, he nodded. We stayed too long in this lie. I zipped up my bag. My hands were shaking. They'll never see us the same again. They're not supposed to. We changed. I looked at him. Are we doing the right thing? He stood, walked over, took my face in his hands. For once, yes. We didn't say goodbye. We left a note. Nothing dramatic, just the truth. We didn't plan this, but it happened, and we're not ashamed anymore. Please try to understand. Noah and Jesse. And then we walked out, into the night, into the car, into whatever came next. On the highway, he reached for my hand, laced our fingers like he wasn't afraid anymore. Where do we go now? I asked. He smiled faintly. Anywhere but back. It was only 3 days before the world caught up with us. 3 days of breathing like free men, of hotel rooms with sunlight on tangled sheets, of laughing in grocery stores like we hadn't burned everything behind us, of pretending maybe, just maybe, we could exist without fallout. But reality doesn't wait forever. And when my phone rang, I already knew it was my mom. Voice brittle. He told him, "Your stepdad." Jesse confessed everything. I closed my eyes. He's furious. Says he never wants to see either of you again. I didn't ask if she agreed, because I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Later that night, Jesse sat across from me at the motel table. He looked different now. Older, like the guilt had added 10 years to his shoulders. "He hates me," he said softly. "No," I replied. "He hates the idea of you. The real you just scares him." He nodded, then looked up. What if we ruined everything? I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure. Maybe we had. Maybe love this complicated was built on fault lines we couldn't see until they split. The real storm came 2 days later. Someone from his college posted something. A photo. Old, innocent, but now it had weight. Is this the same Jesse who moved in with his stepbrother? Eyes. Guess the rumors were true. And like wildfire, the comments came. People guessing, judging, dragging. It wasn't viral, but it was enough. Enough to make Jesse deactivate his social accounts. Enough for my inbox to fill with question marks and hate. Enough to remind us that even in a world full of acceptance, some stories are still too taboo to tell out loud. He shut down, stopped drawing, stopped eating much, started wearing his hood up even when we were inside. I tried to pull him back, to remind him why we left in the first place. But every time I touched him, it felt like touching something fading. One morning I woke up and he wasn't beside me. I found him outside, sitting on the curb, hoodie pulled over his head, cigarette between his fingers. He didn't even smoke. I sat beside him. "Tell me what you're thinking." He exhaled slowly. "I'm thinking maybe we're the villains in someone else's story." I looked at him. We were just trying to find a little space to love each other. Exactly. And even that was too much. That night was our last. Not because we wanted it to be, but because he needed air. He needed space. "I'm going to stay with a friend for a while," he said quietly, just to think. I nodded, even though it felt like he was taking the oxygen with him. He looked back once as he packed his bag, then crossed the room, and kissed me. Slow, meaningful, painful, like goodbye. When the door closed, I sat on the edge of the bed, alone, listening to the silence stretch around me like a punishment. It didn't feel like freedom anymore. It felt like loss. Weeks passed, then months. He texted, sporadically, once to say he'd started drawing again, once to say he missed me but wasn't ready, and once, out of nowhere on a random Tuesday night, "I still see you when I close my eyes." I stared at the message, then replied, "I never stopped seeing you." I don't know where this story ends. Maybe it already has. Maybe we burned too many bridges to ever walk back. Or maybe we just needed to step away long enough to stop carrying other people's shame. But I'll tell you this. If love is wrong, if it's broken, if it's twisted, then I'd rather live in that ruin than ever go back to pretending I didn't feel it. Because Jesse, he wasn't my mistake. He was my truth. And even if the world couldn't handle it, I could.